From Washington, D.C., this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hena Zuberi. Our top story tonight, U.S. President Joe Biden announced today his intent to nominate and appoint 4 people to serve in key roles in the State Department and on the Commission on International Religious Freedom. They include Rashad Hussain, who has been nominated for the post of Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom. This is the first time a Muslim has been nominated for this post. Hussain is the Director for Partnerships and Global Engagement at the National Security Council. During the administration of former U.S. President Barack Obama, he served as U.S. Special Envoy to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. He was also Deputy Associate White House Counsel. The Yale Law School graduate spearheaded efforts to counter anti-Semitism and protect religious minorities in Muslim-majority countries. Khizr Khan has also been nominated by President Biden. This is for the post of Commissioner on the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. Khan, also a lawyer, is the founder of the Constitution Literacy and National Unity Project. He came to prominence during the 2016 U.S. presidential election campaign. During a speech at the Democratic National Convention, he famously pulled out a pocket-sized copy of the U.S. Constitution from his jacket. He then said former U.S. President Donald Trump, then the Republican nominee for presidency, had sacrificed nothing and no one for America and its Constitution. Khan's son, U.S. Army officer Humayun Khan, was killed in 2004 by a suicide car bombing. By the time of Khan's speech, Trump was routinely attacking Muslims and other groups to shore up support. Trump responded by verbally attacking Khan and his wife Ghazala during the rest of his campaign. The 2 appointees are Deborah Lipstadt for Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism with the rank of Ambassador, and Sharon Kleinbaum, appointee for Commissioner of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom. President Joe Biden on Thursday stepped up action to combat the surging spread of COVID-19's Delta variant.
The truth is, as more people get vaccinated, we are better protected as a nation to continue reopening safely and responsibly. We are not fully out of the woods yet, because what is happening in America right now is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Let me say that again. It's a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
He's giving 2 options to all federal workers: either get vaccinated or face regular testing, social distancing, mandatory masks, and limits on official travel. The Pentagon has also required all of the military to follow the same vaccination rules. The Delta coronavirus variant surging across the United States appears to cause more severe illness and spreads as easily as chickenpox. This is according to an internal document from the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention, obtained by the Washington Post. It disclosed unpublished data that says fully vaccinated people might spread the Delta variant at the same rate as unvaccinated people. In other developments related to COVID, Pfizer's CEO says COVID vaccine effectiveness drops to 84% after 6 months. And several GOP lawmakers refuse to comply with the newly reinstated mask requirements on the House side of the Capitol. They're putting themselves at risk of having to pay hefty fines as punishment. Most of the 211 House Republicans are complying with wearing masks on the House floor. Republican Senator Mitt Romney has said getting the COVID-19 vaccine is pro-life. Texas Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee was arrested in Washington, D.C. on Thursday. She was protesting the Senate's delay in passing legislation to protect voting rights. Jackson Lee was arrested while demonstrating outside the Hart Senate Office Building. This is the 3rd week in a row that Congressional Black Caucus members were arrested. Voting restrictions have been enacted in 18 U.S. states this year. This is despite no evidence of widespread electoral fraud. Here is Jackson Lee while getting arrested.
Yes, I engaged in civil disobedience today in front of the Hart Building in Washington, D.C., and I was arrested. I believe when you're getting into good trouble, when you realize that the 15th Amendment has guaranteed the fundamental right to vote, any action that is a peaceful action of civil disobedience is worthy and more to push all of us to do better and to do more and to pass H1, S1, and to pass the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Act. The people of Texas are desperate and needed. The people of America are desperate and needed. And the Constitution provides that support, the fundamental right to vote.
The number of poor Americans is expected to fall by nearly 20 million from 2018 levels, a decline of almost 45%. A New York Times report says that the huge increase in government aid will cut poverty in half this year compared to pre-pandemic levels. It will push the share of Americans in poverty to the lowest level on record. This has come at an extraordinary cost. Annual government spending on major programs is projected to rise fourfold to more than $1 trillion. The three programs that cut poverty the most are stimulus checks, increased food stamps, and expanded unemployment insurance. The drop in poverty cannot be sustained at the same level as these programs have ended or are scheduled to revert to their pre-pandemic size. Michigan's longest-serving U.S. Senator, Carl Milton Levin, died of lung cancer on Thursday at the age of 87. Before graduating from Harvard and practicing law, the Democratic representative was a taxi driver and auto line worker. He, along with Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, was instrumental in leading efforts to legalize indefinite detention without trial of U.S. citizens. Muslims and civil liberty activists opposed the measure, but they lost as the National Defense Authorization Act was signed into law by former President Barack Obama on the last day of 2011. Indefinite detention without trial violates many international laws, including those related to basic human rights. Columbia University says that 83 million people may be killed this century because of rising temperatures. The number is based on a new metric developed called mortality cost of carbon. According to a study by R. Daniel Bressler of Columbia's Earth Institute, this will quantify the mortality impact of decisions relating to the environment. It will help companies and nations assess damages wrought by climate change. This is as the global catastrophe moves forward faster than ever. Greenland lost more than 8.5 billion tons of surface mass, according to the Denmark Meteorological Institute. Flash floods, wildfires, and extreme heat are all indications of rapid climate change. Flash floods would be more common as climate crisis worsens, say scientists. Floods in Western Europe are being called floods of the century. China is still cleaning up following its historical flooding. The AFP has seen an unpublished draft report by the UN's Climate Science Advisory Panel. It presents the most extensive collection to date of the urgent climate threats facing the planet. Among the cities featured in the report is Dhaka, the low-lying capital of Bangladesh. 40% of Dhaka's population lives in especially vulnerable areas. According to this report, almost 1 million people will be displaced in Bangladesh due to sea level rise flooding by 2050. The first flight of Afghans who work for Americans in Afghanistan has arrived in the United States.
I'm pleased to report that the first flight of Operation Allies Refuge that departed Kabul yesterday landed in the United States. This White House initiative aims to ensure the safe relocation of Afghans who have worked for the United States over the course of the past 2 decades.
Around 20,000 Afghans worked for the U.S. following the 2001 invasion of Afghanistan. They now fear retaliation from the Taliban, which opposed the invasion and is now advancing in different parts of the country. They've applied for evacuation under America's Special Immigrant Visas Program. Some estimates suggest that the total number of prospective evacuees could be as high as 100,000 people once relatives have been included. Egyptian security officials were present when Tunisia's prime minister was beaten before he resigned, Middle East Eye reports. The report says Hisham Mashishi was physically assaulted at the presidential palace after repeatedly refusing to stand down. But the deposed leader denies being beaten, according to reports from local media. Middle East Eye, however, stands by its report. On Sunday, Tunisia's President Kais Saied assumed emergency powers to sack the prime minister, suspend parliament, and take over the government. He put in place a curfew, raided Al Jazeera's bureau, and has since fired the head of national television. Marc Owen Jones is an assistant professor in Middle East Studies and Digital Humanities at Hamad bin Khalifa University in Doha, Qatar. Analyzing 1,200 tweets, he noticed that most tweets were from Emirati Saudi influencers located in Egypt, the UAE, or Saudi Arabia. The Washington Post is also reporting that newspapers, television commentators, and social media influencers in these countries hailed Said's move. They called it the triumph of the popular will over Ennahda. Ennahda is Tunisia's largest political party. Egypt, since 2014, has labeled the Muslim Brotherhood group as a terrorist organization. Courts have been trying several members and leaders of the group in terrorism-related charges. Many have had their death sentences upheld. They were charged for bombing a police bus, which killed 3 officers. However, the Muslim Brotherhood denied the charge and condemns the attack. An Al-Qaeda-related group claimed responsibility. The Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood won the country's first fair elections in 2012. But the Egyptian military dismissed the elected government in 2014. Since then, 21 Muslim Brotherhood members have been sentenced to death. NPR is reporting that Israeli spyware company NSO Group has temporarily blocked several government clients around the world from using its technology. The suspensions are in response to an investigation by the Pegasus Project. It linked the company's spyware program, Pegasus, to hacks and potential surveillance of journalists, human rights activists, and heads of state. NSO says that it has 60 customers in 40 countries, all of them intelligence agencies, law enforcement bodies, and militaries. It is not clear which governments are suspended from using Pegasus. The Times of India is reporting that Israeli agencies raided NSO's office over the Pegasus scandal. And French ministers have reported been issued new secure phones for fear of the Israeli spyware. NSO Group, based in Israel, sold its Pegasus spyware to India, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. It allows a user to read data from smartphones and spy via their microphones and camera. The Pegasus software uses vulnerabilities in smartphones and social media source codes. Canada's government has promised to review tax policies and procedures involving charities amid criticisms for harassing Muslims. A joint report issued earlier this year by the University of Toronto and the National Council of Canadian Muslims documented systematic discrimination. And in June, the International Civil Liberties Monitoring Group, or ICLMG, found that between 2008 and 2015, 75% of all charities who had their status revoked were Muslim. Since then, another 4 Muslim charities have had their status pulled. The ICLMG report further noted that none of the groups or individuals associated with the groups have been charged with any terrorism offenses. Peru's President Pedro Castillo has sworn in his Prime Minister, Guido Bellido, a fellow member of the Marxist-Leninist Free Peru Party. Many Latin American leaders attended the ceremony. They included Chile's Sebastián Piñera and Argentina's Alberto Fernández. Inaugurated in Lima himself just Wednesday, Castillo presided over Bellido's swearing in at the Pampa de la Quina. This was the site of the 1824 battle that ended Spanish domination of Peru and South America at large. Indigenous people have asked for the support of leftist President Castillo, who has promised a new constitution and an end to corruption. Everyone knows gun violence is rising in the United States. Is there anything new here? Ali Khalaf and Saleha Farouk explore the topic.
Gun violence in the U.S. is rising. It has resulted in the highest number of fatalities in 2 decades. The Gun Violence Archive is keeping an eye on this data. It counted that just in 1 week this year, there were at least 915 shootings nationwide. That is an average of 1 shooting every 12 minutes. It left 1,007 injured and 430 dead. In 2020, 43,000 gun deaths were reported in America. This made it the deadliest year for shooting-related incidents in the last 20 years. This includes homicide, murders, suicide, unintentional shootings, and defensive gun use incidents. This year, an average of 123 people are dying every single day. Texas has the highest rate of violence with 3,513, followed by California with 3,184, and Florida with 2,724.
I just saw people looking that way, and I didn't know what was going on until I heard someone say get down, so I just started going under the seats.
Oh my gosh, how are you feeling?
It was my second shooting, so I was kind of prepared, because I always am expecting something to happen.
Observers say that people are becoming afraid to go out to parks, shopping malls, or baseball games.
Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Welcome back. There are at least 7 Rohingya refugees dead as 4 days of heavy monsoon rains and strong winds pelted Bangladesh's Cox's Bazar, causing flash floods and landslides. More than 12,000 refugees have been affected, while an estimated 2,500 shelters have been damaged or destroyed. A refugee from these camps is joining Saleha Farouk for a detailed conversation. Over to you, Saleha.
Once again, thank you. Today we're joined by Abdullah Habib, who is a Rohingya refugee currently living in Bangladesh. Abdullah, thank you so much for your time today.
Hello everyone, this is Abdullah connecting from the refugee camp in Bangladesh. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for all of you here today listening to me. I am doing good, but the situation of the camp is not good yet, as it's been 4 days here continuous raining and flooding every camp, and also landslides are happening.
So this recent flooding has hit mostly the refugee camps in Bangladesh, which is home to predominantly Rohingya people such as yourself. This is a heartbreaking situation. I want to ask you, Abdullah, how are the people in Cox's Bazar camp more vulnerable to the changing climate? How are they impacted more?
Actually, it's been 4 years we are here in Rohingya in the camp in Bangladesh, but we did not experience this situation in past years, in past 3 years. But this year we have this horrible situation in this monsoon. Uh, Actually, the camp is not not a good place, not a secure place, not a uh, uh, to survive, as it is hilly region. Some shelters were built over the hill. Some shelters are built in the side of the hill, and some are you know uh, below the hills. So the location of the shelters are not the same. The mostly the flooding was happened in the shelter which are the below of the hills, as there is no you know there is no place to flow the water easily, as the shelters are were built very crowdedly. And when the raining was started, when the rainy season was started, there was no special management to avoid this flooding. And actually, in Bangladesh, especially in Bangladesh, this heavy raining was happened in this area, in Cox's Bazar area. And in other part of the Bangladesh, there was not there was not heavy raining like here we have. So since 4 days, we have heavy raining and flooding. Already, uh, nearly 15,000 people are affected, and many shelters were destroyed, many shelters were damaged, and also kill at least 7 people. This flooding.
Now, this flooding has affected some camps that were in existence since the 90s. So a lot of people are wondering, where are these families going to go now that their only homes have been destroyed?
Actually, we do not have any other place to move on. We do not have any safe place to avoid, to escape this flooding and the heavy raining. So sometimes we try to move another place where the flooding did not happen. And also some people take shelter over the hill, who were in the below of the hill where the flooding was happened. And now currently the government and NGOs are planning to relocate some of the family who were mostly affected in this flooding.
It is reported that almost 2,000 children in the camps are missing, unfortunately. And for many years, human rights defenders have warned that such seasonal cyclones pose a major threat to refugees like yourself. I wanted to ask you, Abdullah, what is the Bangladeshi government doing to protect Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh?
Actually, the Bangladesh government are trying to protect us as they can. They have provided security force in the camp. They have provided police. They have provided army, and also they have planning uh, to diverse people, to disperse people from the camp, so that the crowded in order to decrease crowded. Actually, the camp is very crowded. We are living in very crowded place. Uh, in 1 kilometer place, we are living we are living 50,000 people in 1 kilometer place. So the camp is very limited. So if there is happen any disaster, any natural disaster, so Bangladesh could not build any safe place to escape the disaster because of there is no any empty space to build such shelter, to build such building. So if sometime it's happen, they try to relocate people in another place from the away it is like they did in few months ago. They relocated few some people to Bajanjar Island. So currently they also trying to do the same thing, the people who are affected in this flooding. So we can say we do not have any a special protection from either from the Bangladesh government nor from the NGOs. We are living as we have lived in Myanmar, and also we cannot we cannot hope of any protection from NGO, from Bangladesh government. So we try ourselves to stay safe. We try ourselves to have protection the way we can.
So after the flooding, a lot of Rohingya are saying that they want to return to Myanmar or Burma if their safety is ensured and if they can receive their citizenship. What do you think about this?
Okay, good question. Actually, we all the refugee want to return our country as soon as possible. But the situation is not good in Myanmar yet. Also, the government of Myanmar are not ready to accept us, are not ready to, start the repatriation process. The way we want to return. We have some demand before returning to our country, and if they are also they are ready to give us our rights, to give us citizenship, to give us the safety and security, we will return anytime. Even today, if they are going to give us this, we will go. But though we are affected in flooding, we are affected by the flooding, and we do not have any place to stay in Bangladesh refugee camp. We cannot go return to our country because we cannot go return to our country without anything, without our rights, without our citizenship. So if anyone will if anyone decide to return to our country in this hard time, so but he cannot go, he cannot return because of the situation in Myanmar also very bad, very also they are the people in Myanmar also affected by the COVID-19, and also the coup has the military coup has disturbed everyone in the country. So we can say anyone, no one of the refugee would like to go the country in this time.
The Rohingya people in the camps have experienced a lot. They went through the lockdown because of COVID-19. There was also some fires that destroyed some camps. And on top of everything, now you are dealing with the flooding. If you can tell us, what is the feeling amongst the Rohingya community? What do your family think? What do your friends think? What would they like to tell the NGOs, the Bangladeshi government, and the Burmese government?
Actually, yes, you're right. We have been facing many, horrible situation even in the camp since we are here. As if I say, a few months ago we have fire accident. It was a massive fire accident, ever we have in the camp. So also this accident was made, nearly 50,000 people shelterless. Also, everything they have was, burned on. They lost everything in this fire accident. The same things now happening in this flooding. So actually, the life in the camp are not very easy to survive. We have challenges in every step, and we have challenges in every day. We have we face many, challenges in our daily life. So actually, whenever we face such challenges, we cannot, we cannot move on without, overcoming these challenges. We have to find way to overcome the challenges. So, for example, now we have lost everything in this flooding. We do not have clothes to wear because it is already wetted. It was already wetted, and the foods are also destroyed. The the shelter is not suitable to sleep. So how we are managing this to sleep in and eating and wearing. So yes, in this hard situation, what we do is we eat dry food. When we do not have food to eat, and also we cannot. If we have food, we cannot cook it because the kitchen is flooded. So, and we do not have dry clothes, so we wear the wetted clothes. So such things we face in the camp. So, and this is not new thing for us. We have been facing such challenges since we were in Myanmar, and we can say it is like our daily life. This is our daily life. So every moment we have challenges.
Abdullah Habib is a Rohingya refugee living in Bangladesh. Abdullah, thank you so much for your courage and for your time to speak with us today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me here, and also for hearing my voice.
Back to the news studio.
Thank you, Saliha. It's indeed a great devastation. Before moving on to our next analysis, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back after these messages.
Our fellow Americans.
Right now, the COVID-19 vaccines are available to millions of Americans.
And soon, they will be available to everyone.
The science is clear. These vaccines will protect you and those you love from this dangerous and deadly disease.
They could save your life.
So we urge you to get vaccinated when it's available to you.
That's the first step to ending the pandemic and moving our country forward. It's up to you.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back. Representative Cori Bush introduced a resolution calling on Congress to invest in ending the homelessness crisis by 2025. The resolution, called the Unhoused Bill of Rights, demands that the federal government declare homelessness a public health emergency and make significant investment in creating more affordable housing and supportive services for unhoused people. To discuss this in detail, let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Over to you, Imam Mujahid.
Thank you, Hena. Well, the pandemic is still there, or as it is being called, pandemic of the unvaccinated. Homeless are being mistreated already. New York wants them to out of the hotels and on the streets, essentially, if not the shelters. And Los Angeles is closing down the encampment of the homeless people. Many of them have a full-time job, but except that cannot afford the rent. In this context, it is very important and a good news that the only congressperson who has ever experienced homelessness, Cori Bush, representative from Missouri, she has presented a bill which is Unhoused Bill of Rights. It has been introduced. It has 17 co-sponsors in the House. And today we will talk with someone who is very excited about it and has endorsed this particular one, Eric Tars. Welcome to Muslim Network TV.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Eric Tars is the legal director of National Homelessness Law Center. How many homeless people are there in America?
It's a great question, and it's very hard to give an answer to. The federal government counts on one night every year and usually counts somewhere between 500,000 and 750,000 individuals. However, that's a dramatic undercount, and we know this because that's by using the definition from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. However, the Education Department uses a more inclusive definition, and they count over the course of a year at least 1.5 million school children, and those are just school-age children who experience homelessness. And so we think the number is probably closer to 2 to 3 million people all across the country over the course of a year. And this is about to increase greatly, as at the end of this week, we know that the eviction moratorium that the CDC has put out in order to prevent COVID from spreading because of mass evictions is going to expire if Congress doesn't act to extend it. And so in many communities, we'll see evictions that have been stayed in the process by the courts because of the moratorium immediately start to go forward. So it could get much worse very quickly.
You know, so many things are tied to having a home, the address, and where you can say that, hey, send me things on this address. So New York Times yesterday has an extensive report, somewhat good report, saying that, the poverty in our country is going to be cut almost by 50% thanks to all the stimulus checks and social service program because of the pandemic which were in place. Of course, those things are ending. But were those checks ever reached homeless people?
Many homeless individuals were able to access those benefits. We worked hard to make sure that you didn't need to have an address, that you could get the benefits through an organization, that you might have a mailbox there, or through other methods. But it was definitely a challenge for many homeless individuals who haven't filed their taxes in maybe multiple years, because that was the mechanism that the checks and the direct deposits were originally rolling out through. And it's hard for homeless individuals to have a bank account with no permanent address, often no ID, no way of verifying who they are. So there are definitely challenges for people experiencing homelessness, and those who are going to be evicted the checks may go to their previous address, things like that. So yeah, we know that even those benefits, which have been a lifeline for a lot of people and have been lifting people out of poverty, and it's going to be a challenge to keep those benefits getting to the people who need them.
Tell us, what is this unhoused Bill of Rights?
So this is an effort. We've seen state level homeless bills of rights across the country for a number of years, dating back to 2012, 2013, were some of the first ones introduced. But this is the first time at the federal level that we're seeing an effort like this. And it's basically saying that our unhoused brothers and sisters, neighbors, community members are part of our community. They are deserving of the same rights that we all expect as human beings, our civil and human rights. And that includes things like the right to be able to sleep at night. You and I take it for granted. You and I take for granted we're sitting right now. In some communities, that can be labeled a crime if you do it in public and if you don't have an alternative place to do it. And things like voting, access to the ballot. And if you don't have a permanent address, in some communities, for example, Kansas just required a permanent address in order to be able to vote. But these are human rights. These are civil rights that everyone should be able to enjoy. And so this unhoused Bill of Rights lists those rights, not that homeless people get to enjoy specially, but just to make sure that they are equitably and equally enjoyed by people experiencing homelessness. And then going beyond that, talking about things that we don't often talk about as rights, things like the human right to adequate housing, and putting forth the levels of support so that every American can enjoy that right to adequate housing that we all should be entitled to as part of our basic human dignity. As you said, without housing, how can you, if you don't know where you're going to lay your head at night, how can you focus on school and your right to education? How can you learn about who you would want to vote for and participate in the political process? So that basic right to housing underlies so many other of our basic rights.
Now, this particular bill comes from the Cori Bush, who at one time herself was homeless. Could you tell her how the bill came about? She thought about it. You guys worked with her.
Yeah, this was something, her office actually came to us. We have worked on a lot of the state level homeless bills of rights, and we had reached out to her office when she came in and got elected. And we said, knowing your background, we would love to work with you on homeless policy and support the things that are important to you. And so when she had this idea, when she heard about the effort for this sort of Bill of Rights concept, she turned to our organization, which is a national legal organization working for 30 more and plus years on housing and homelessness. And so she asked us if we had advice on how we could put this together and what should be included. And we both helped inform it directly ourselves, but also more importantly, connected her office with our network of unhoused people and their advocates working in the community so that it could be really informed by the people on the streets experiencing homelessness and asking them what would they need to feel included, what would they need to feel fully human.
No, it says the bill asks for the permanent, ending of this homeless crisis by 2025, which is just short 4 years away. I mean, do you think that it's doable?
It's absolutely doable. If the pandemic, for all the difficulties it's caused, it's also shown us that when we are motivated, when we put our muscle into something, that we can do it. We saw in California, tens of thousands of people experiencing homelessness were placed off the streets directly into hotels. We could do that all the time. We saw that homeless encampments were allowed to stay where they were and provided with services rather than attacked by law enforcement and pushing people out of public areas. And so instead of misdirecting our resources to harassment and exclusion, sending out social workers, sending out people to include them, to bring them into housing or into shelter. And we saw communities using some of the FEMA resources or the emergency rental assistance and other things to actually buy low-income hotels and turn them into permanent affordable housing. We saw investments across the board, and we've seen an awareness amongst Americans like never before that, homelessness has always been more about structural causes than individual causes. And now people are realizing, I lost my job in the pandemic due to no fault of my own, and I could become homeless too. And so I think that awareness lends itself to the systemic changes that we need to see. And so I'm hopeful. I think there's more of a chance now with the infrastructure bill that's coming through, with new budget acts, with Representative Maxine Waters proposing universal vouchers for the first time. It's very possible, but we need to climb that political hill to get there.
Well, political hill or Capitol Hill, whatever hill you want to call it. And there are always people who are disruptive in that particular process. Tell me this. What is the total amount? We are the leading country in the world, largest economy, capitalist country. It's shameful, even if the government figure 500,000 homeless or your figures of 2 million or so homeless, why we are unable to take care of it? What is wrong with us?
Well, the thing is that many people don't remember, we did take care of it. Homelessness has not always existed on this scale in this country. But in the early 1980s, President Reagan cut the top tax rates significantly and cut the HUD budget for affordable housing by more than half. And that has never been made up. So in the late 1970s, there was actually an oversupply of deeply affordable housing. And for people who couldn't even afford that, we had a safety net. We had adequate numbers of vouchers. We had public housing where the elderly, the folks who are disabled and can't work, or the folks who are working but just can't afford market rate housing, it was there. And we had a social contract with our fellow Americans dating back to the days of the Depression, where President Roosevelt said, every American deserves a right to a decent home. But that contract was broken in the 1980s and has never been made up. And so for the past 40 years, we've really been losing deeply affordable housing year after year after year, tens, hundreds of thousands of units, to the point where we're now in this huge deficit, and wages just have not kept up with the cost of housing. And we've lost our safety net. So, that's why we have the homeless situation that we have today.
Eric, is amazing. You're saying this is not a chronic problem which is unresolvable. This problem is more recent problem. And most significantly, you said that we had oversupply of housing at one time. What time was that?
This was up through the late 1970s. Like I said, there was a social safety net of both the vouchers and public housing. But in 1980, the budget for deeply affordable housing at the federal level was cut in half. And every year since then, for the past 40 years, it's remained at inadequate levels. So right now, we do distribute some subsidies to people experiencing homelessness or who are housing unstable, but that only gets to 1 out of every 4 families who needs it. That means 3 out of 4 families who need it, they need it, but they don't get it, and that puts them at imminent risk of homelessness. But it used to be that it got to 4 out of 4 families, and if it still did today, then we wouldn't see homelessness on our streets.
Well, thank you so much, Eric. But while I let you go, tell me what's the difference between the homeless term and unhoused term?
I mean, it's different ways of saying it. It's referring to the same population, people who have lost their housing. I think for some people, homeless has become a pejorative term. And so people are seeking an alternative term that doesn't have the same negative connotations, that allows them to speak about the fact that while they may be without housing, that they still have a home, that, home is where the heart is, or they build their home even in encampments and community with one another. So they, want to shift some of that language, but at the end of the day, it's trying to talk about the same population, just lending them back the dignity that's been robbed from them in this process.
Well, thank you so much, Eric Thars. Truly appreciate your work and your support for this bill, and look forward to you getting it passed and getting you to celebrate.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much for covering this important story and sharing it with your viewers.
Back to you, Hena.
Thank you so much, Imam Mujahid and Mr. Thars. That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube channel and Facebook page. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.